Sherry, when you wrote the book, Just a Reality, what was, I'm curious to hear, what was your expectation? What did you want people to take away after reading it? Did you want them to have a certain feeling, a certain kind of changing concept in critical thinking? What was the thing you wanted most?
Well, this is where we recognize something very beautiful. And that's how we live, move, think, and really care for our nervous system. It shapes our outcomes. I really thought over the time in the course of me being in healthcare that patients didn't come in feeling like they were in control. And then it hit me that it becomes the moment where people start to realize that they have more influence over their health than they've been led to believe. And that when your body is aligned and functioning well, that's your reality. That's your energy, your resilience, and really your ability to engage fully in life. And it just shifts everything measurably. And that's why I really wanted to write the book, because I wanted to empower and lift up versus what we've been told. Just pay attention, just do what the doctor says.
What does being empowered in control look like? What does that look like? I guess when a patient comes into any medical office and they feel disempowered and they feel like, hey, I've got to do as I'm told because I'm not the expert, and that's understandable, right? Someone goes into a situation, it's sometimes quite nerve wracking going into let's just use a GP, for example, a doctor's office, and like, hey, I'm struggling with this problem, help me solve it. And they say, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And they say a lot of things you don't understand. The good ones are generally good. They allow you to be able to understand and put things very much into a understanding like you're a 3-year-old. But what does that look like from that disempowerment going in confused to be able to be empowered?
Well, so you're going to get an option from your provider, your healthcare provider, but the question really becomes what's influencing what? And this is where the tables need to be flipped upside down, because first you need to recognize that your brain communicates to your body constantly, like every day, all day. It has full 100% control over what you do, what you say, and how you say it. So your most precious resource is the organ you need to protect. And that's where no healthcare provider was talking about that. So you're saying that my brain and my body communicate constantly. So what? So what? It means it changes everything. Structure, how your body is for bone, let's say, talk about the skeletal structure that we have, that influences how you function. And when that gets influenced, just take something really, most people think it's just minutia. It doesn't really matter, like your posture. Your posture influences your breathing. Your breathing influences your stress, and your stress influences performance. So at the end of the day, is that pill that the doctor's going to give you influence your performance? And the answer is a full stop. No, until you recognize you're in charge, the decisions you make are going to have an outcome, and the outcome needs to be positive. So when I look back, Abby, and I think back to the things that I thought were real and true, which was there's a pill for every ill. I really thought that. I thought naively that whatever's going to break, you're just going to fix it. And it's not like that at all. It's actually the reverse of that. It's when you don't actually have a performance mindset that what you have you need to care for, because there isn't a pill for every ill. And that's where it all changed for me. And that's how you need to go into the doctor's office, and hopefully you're there for a checkup. The word prevention scares some of us, but we need to be there. We need to actually monitor where we are so that we can get to where we want to go.
I like the quote. I don't actually know who said it, but it's see the prevention over the cure is like instead of always having a particular dis-ease or an ailment and going, okay, what do I take now? It's like, well, how do we kind of look back and say, well, let's look at a preventative measure. Let's prevent this from happening again. So instead of seeing you again in 3 months, 6 months, I'm not going to see you for 5 years, for 10 years. So when we're looking at that, I guess that prevention, someone comes into the doctor's office and they have a particular ailment. And what does that conversation look like? How are they, I guess, supposed to be confident enough to be able to say to the GP, to a chiropractor, to a physiotherapist, a physical therapist, whatever it might say, hey, I'm struggling with these things. What am I supposed to do now if it's not going to be a pill or a medication? Because that's what we're so used to in society. Is like you've got a ailment, here's a pill. If you've got a headache, here's a pill. If you've got itchy knees, here's a pill. Whatever it might be. What does that conversation look like, and how do people, I guess, have the confidence to go into the conversation?
So, and I apologize because I think I lost you for just a moment there, but I one of the things in having that confidence becomes being able to engage educationally. And that means that you need to be able to understand not the high level jargon. Like, if I came to you right now and said, "Hey, Abby, you've got a retrospondylolisthesis," you'd be like, "Whoa, whoa, that sounds really bad. What do I do with that?" What I really want people to do is reflect at the basic foundational level. You cannot outwork a dysregulated nervous system, no matter how hard you work. I mean, if you think you're going to get the results that are top line, if you're doing everything to destroy the system, why would the system perform optimally for you? And so the first and foremost is, what are the keys? What are the elements to maximizing this human frame that I have, and understand that it's an ever changing system? When you can understand that the system, like in high school, we were taught this concept called homeostasis. And it's a concept whereby it's a balanced system. It's a beautiful way of looking at some parts of it. Now, if you adjust the reality, it's really not about homeostasis, because we're not living in a petri dish. We're actually, our internal environment needs to match and either control or balance with our external environment. Let me give you an example. So, if I'm sitting in nature, the birds are singing, it's a beautiful sunshiny day, and I'm sitting and I'm meditating, I'm in perfect balance. My internal is meeting my external environment. However, even if you're in perfect harmony and you go into a full chaotic environment where people are yelling and screaming and full dysfunction and total chaos, I recognize that how I'm feeling is not matching the external environment. There's got to find a balance. So I'm either going to have to bump up my stress level to get to the place where I can handle the dysfunction, or the dysfunction is going to have to calm down so I can then get back to my balance. This is what we've been missing in healthcare for hundreds of years, is we've been looking at the internal and forgetting the external environment exists, and that how our body responds is like a physics equation. In that is, for every action there is an opposite and equal reaction. Sit with that for a moment, because everything you do to your body will have an equal and opposite reaction. So the more stress you put in, don't be surprised by the more stress you're going to get out of it.
It's such an interesting framework, right? Because coming from the strength and conditioning and nutrition background, when we're talking to clients about even something such as decision making, heightened stress, heightened cortisol, poor sleep leads to poor decision making. The next day, there is this kind of constant cycle that is going on. What I'd love to be able to do is, and I think is the answer is going to kind of come out by going through this, is looking into some of the pillars of the book. Is there any ones that kind of stand out most to you that you think these are ones, if I was to be able to say these two or three things, and these are the ones that I think most people can positively get something out of?
Yes. So when we look at our habits every day, there are absolutely foundational moments that have to take place. The first and foremost is motion is lotion. It absolutely cannot be any other way. What doesn't grow dies. Physics. It's the law of physics. You don't put energy in, you don't get energy out. That's just the way it is. So when I start thinking about the number one foundational piece is, believe it or not, your sleep. The energy that you use, because we think more about our cell phones than we do our sleep habits. So we plug our cell phone in. Why? Because it needs to be charged. Yes or no? Answer is always yes. You don't plug in your phone, you get the results that you get. The next day, you're just about to call someone and you can see that red battery and you're like, oh, I missed it. I forgot to plug my phone in. Ask yourself why you treat your cell phone better than your body, because most people negate sleep. They think they can cheat the system. Your cell phone can't cheat the system. It either gets the energy it needs or it does not. So, first and foremost, it's absolutely paramount that we're moving. And that movement creates a whole mechanistic opportunity for the body to get into a cycle of fluid repair, of taking on things that it should not have seen in the first place. We've just been hit with the COVID virus. We knew that the people that were in better health were going to fare better than those who were in poor health. The one thing that makes a difference, and when we go into it in the book, is there is a protein called the titin protein. It's the titan for a reason. It is the titan. Like, you cannot take it on without it. The one thing that makes the titin protein is movement. You can't get the titin protein produced without movement. And so when you start to recognize the fundamentals of biochemistry, as well as how our bodies actually adapt, then and only then will you start to recognize, you know what, sleep becomes imperative, both for my mental health and my physiological health. So that's an absolute no-go. Movement critical. And I come up with 4 pieces of movement that are really critical that I want your audience to really hear. And that's, I call it the quaternary of motion. It's 4 parts. It's movement in its finest way. So it's stability, mobility, flexibility, and capability. You cannot be balanced, meaning that your stability cannot happen if you don't have flexibility, because you're not going to be able to move like on a boat where you move with the waves. You have to have the ability to balance on a boat or you're going to fall. Stability and flexibility are 2 peas in a pod. It's like a beautiful marriage. Now you get then from stability and flexibility to mobility and capability. Without strength, our body can't do all the things that we're asking it. Try to lift 150 pounds when you can only lift 20 is a problem. We're going to injure ourselves. But the best part of a muscle is not that it's big, it's that it actually responds faster. Those type 2 fibers that come with muscles are your fast twitch fibers. So everybody that's working out in the gym knows this. I can move better. I can be stronger, lift heavier because I've taken the time to reflect on what it means to be strong. And that those 2, I think, if I was to boil everything down on adjusted reality in a nutshell for you, understand the why. Why is sleep so important? And why is movement so important?
So why is sleep important? If you're to boil it down into a sentence or two, if someone comes to you with poor sleep and they're complaining about all the ailments that you have, and sleep is the thing that you want to fix, and they are, as you said, they're completely distracted, and they care more about plugging their phone and then plugging themselves in to be able to recover, what is the first thing that you say to them?
For sleep, I think as I go through and I say, your emotional capabilities are balanced by replenishment. So when you lack a good night's rest, you're not actually giving your body the full pharmaceutical reality. So I look at the body as the pharmacy, okay? It produces any chemical it wants whenever it wants. Ah, but wait, what happens when you don't give it the time to replenish? So you shut the doors early. Well, you just kicked the stock boy out and he was going to stock the shelves, but you're like, yep, nope, we can't have you today. You got to leave. I got to take care of the rest of the stuff that's going on. But the big piece that you're missing when I tell people that sleep is so important in one sentence is you no longer have the chemicals that you should have had the next day to carry on with the biochemistry that your body's going to ask for. So don't be surprised if you become extremely emotional because you've lost some of that beautiful serotonin that should have been replaced. Don't be surprised when you're feeling fatigued because you lost some of the enkephalins and endorphins that keep us happy. So don't expect plugging in your phone the next day that you're not going to get the red battery because you are. It's going to happen.
Sleep's such an interesting concept. I think nowadays it's been spoke about more and more, which is great. But I still don't think people, after working with thousands and thousands of people for the last 15 years, people still don't put the time and effort into sleep, because it's an interesting part of being I guess the organisms that we are, because we tend to abuse it a little bit, and we can kind of get away with it for a period of time. So I think that that sustained, however, starts to have some really negative impacts, but we'll always push the button. We'll always try to go, oh, let's push the limit a little bit more, a little bit more. But ultimately, whether it's weeks, months, and years, sleep is one of those things that if we don't get a handle on, it's going to come back to really bite us in the ass.
You're so right. Don't and here's the best part and the worst part too. When you say it'll come back and get us, it comes back in spades. It's not just, oh, it's one thing. Here's the problem. Structure actually changes function, and function changes how we live, eat, breathe, and think. So when we come back to that, how you're going to ask your body to do better, you have to ask, what daily inputs am I going to put in? Because at the end of that moment, where you've deprived yourself for months and months and months, it's not just, oh, I don't have this chemical. It's, oh, I don't have this function. Therefore, I can't keep doing the things that I'm doing. And that's, I think, the heart of where my profession, chiropractic, has always looked at it as you're a whole being, not just a walking heart and two kidneys and a brain. These are functions that work together. That whole being part being, I think, therefore I am. I am a being, which means I'm ever evolving, I'm ever changing. And now expect the best when you put the best in. Expect the worst with a reality check that you're making these choices every single day.
If someone comes to you and they have particular ailments, you know that sleep's going to be one of the big foundational pillars to solve it. Do you have a couple of non-negotiables with sleep of like, if you want to optimize your sleep, here are the two, three things that you must do on a daily and daily, in a morning, midday, and evening kind of period that's going to help you optimize your sleep the best?
Yes. When I look at the simplest things, they often bring the greatest outcomes. And here's why. When we start simple changes, that's they layer on top of each other. And there is a famous saying, and I think Abby, you'll recognize this, is that practice makes
Oh,
perfect.
perfect. Yeah,
But
I was going to say
that's the
progress.
problem right there. It's actually not true. I'm going to adjust that reality because practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So these little teeny changes that you practice really well actually make a permanent change in your life. So when you ask, what are some of the things that I would highly recommend? First and foremost, that when you're sitting longer than 30 minutes, a very important habit is to get up and do some form of stretching, because flexibility means everything. It keeps you stable. That's a baby micro step. The second micro step, because you're thinking about how we've evolved as humans. We're now sitting and scrolling and consuming all of the tech neck kind of realities. When you pick up your phone, a very simple habit that I think everyone in your audience could learn right now is, when you pick up your cell phone, instead of becoming the hunchback of Notre Dame, you actually bring your elbow in. So I want your visual audience who's listening right now is, you pick up your cell phone, you think of four words: in, up, back, down. Those are the four words. Every single time you pick up your phone. So the elbow comes in to your side, that's in, and then up. Your hand has to come up towards your face. In, up. And then I want you to just roll your shoulders back and down. You have completely changed the game. That postural change, it's so microscopic, but you do it 3 to 400 times a day and you don't even recognize it when you pick up your cell phone. Because when we get our forward head flexing, we're not only putting stress on our spine, which creates that postural distortion, it challenges the nervous system, which is your brain reacting to your body. And remember, these are the small things. So, micro stretch, get up 30 minutes, do a stretch for yourself. That's your flexibility. Your mobility is picking up that mobile phone and getting it in, up, back, down. Now, the third one, many people will think, oh, it's just really minimal. It's actually hydration, but it's just water. And because we often think it's just not a big deal, it becomes less and less and less over time, and we forget. So many people are going to have to either carry around a water bottle or keep filling their water glass, because if we are made by water is the majority of our body, cells connect through fluid motion. So for me to connect to another cell, if I was one cell and I need to connect to another, there has to be some type of consistency, and it's often water. People that get dehydrated often start to feel achy, sore, difficult in their cognitive sense. And it was something simple that they just could have changed. And it grows over time. The more dehydrated you get, just like a plant, don't feed a plant for many weeks and then see how well it thrives. That's all I have to say. We just did a mic drop.
Interested to have this conversation. I want to say daily basis is definitely got to be at least every day or every second day as it pertains to performance in the gym. And the very first question I ask is, were you hydrated before you went in? And almost every single time it's just like no. And we've had like some serious heat waves here in the UK recently. And one of my first protocol to every single client was, we need to increase water intake for this period of time immediately. And I can't tell you the amount of people that actually followed that and then complain about not doing it. And then the fix was, when you go into your session tomorrow, all I want you to do is to consume, depending on the person, but X amount of water before your session. And every single time, 100% of the time, it was, oh wow, my session was way better. I was like, well, no shit.
See? It's so simple, but it's so hard when it's not put together.
You said, and forgive me if this is incorrect, and I've got this a little bit lost, but modern healthcare is a little fragmented and disjointed. Is that still the case? And what did you mean by that? And is this worldwide too? Obviously, being in two different countries, but is this just in the US, or do you feel as generally the WHO have kind of got a few things wrong that we need to be able to pick up on?
I think it's healthcare in general. I think it is very fragmented. And why? It's because we still have the opportunity to rely on an external piece where we're not really focused on prevention. We really, now as an athlete and your listeners, they're really focused on how can I do better, have better, be better. That's the perfect opportunity where healthcare should be. But oftentimes we're still focused on reactive rather than proactive. And that's why I think it's really important when we get down to where we're being treated, is we're being treated as a organ. Like, I'm going to go in and get my skin checked. I'm going to go in and get my heart checked. I want a whole being reality. To be is perhaps the most powerful action in human experience. That's the simple declaration, I am, which has inspired philosophers, faith tradition leaders throughout history. It is really about the identity of who I really am and who I can become. And so when I say it's fragmented, it's that we're not a destination. Optimization should be something we strive for every day. Whole being care is where we should have a reflection that it's an active process. It's about daily choices. We have physicians around us who are there to keep us fully alive. That's your ER doctors. Their only care is to keep you alive. That's their only job. And they do it really well. Like, you have a bullet hole in you, boy, you want an ER doctor. But who is the doctor who's going to walk with you on an everyday purpose? Like, who's looking at your prevention so that they can remind you that in order for you to be the best you, someone needs to actually look at your lifestyle choices and be very honest with you and monitor them. So we're entering an age where we're going to be able to monitor every algorithm that exists to the humankind. Is it going to make us better? No, only if we choose to make it better. And that's where I think adjusted reality in the healthcare system needs to move from sick care to health care. And that fragmentation is going to evolve when our artificial intelligence tells us, Dr. Sherry McAllister, you are lacking sleep. Therefore, the following functions are going to be altered. And then, and only then, are we going to wake up and go, oh, okay, my reality has really changed. I am no longer living a life that is optimized. I'm actually just simply surviving. I'm not thriving.
I love that we're starting to touch on AI, and this opens up a kind of a really nice avenue to be able to step into, because it's a conversation that I'm having more and more and more, which is understandable with the increase in technology and AI, especially even in the medical sense. But you kind of beautifully sum that up, and this is the conversation that I had many a times with people wearing things like whoops and aura rings and things of that nature, and monitoring HRV, which I think are all great. It's like, great, you care more about your health and well-being, but you're not doing anything with it. And you mentioned it earlier, is in terms of like the knowledge and the education aspect. It's like, okay, like you're low in HRV, your HRV is low today, your aura rings or your whoops tell you to have a rest today. Subjectively, how do you feel? Because that's just objective data that is gathered through monitoring, however it monitors. How are you feeling? Well, I actually feel really good today. Well, should you take a rest day today? Or, well, my watch told me to. I'm like, but you feel good. So do you think today you might be able to go into the gym and actually perform really well? Go and try it out. The challenge I think people have is that they will see one thing and kind of see it as the be all and end all. Go, oh, my data says this, I need to follow it, versus having the subjective element of the data of like, how am I feeling? How am I understanding and interpreting this data? Because on one hand, AI is going to provide great feedback, as you said there. AI says your sleep score is low. Here's exactly what we're going to be able to do. Here's what I need you to focus on today to be able to help increase your energy levels, for example, and your cognitive function throughout the day. But if you don't do anything with that, nothing will change.
See, and that's the beauty. That's why we take our current reality and we have to adjust it to what do I really want? Better health starts with better daily inputs. And I think when we start asking better questions, we get better health. And so I am fully appreciative of those people that are wearing the watches, that are wearing the rings. And then that, because that's foundational. That's like, now you know. But now the question is going to be, as I look at it, is how do we start getting ourselves in alignment with the technology that we've brought into our lives? How will it help us be able to optimize our alignment? And alignment really is the key for chiropractors. We adjust and we watch for the alignment. Alignment is lifestyle. So what you're doing today is going to make a difference. Maybe it's within the next 2 hours, could be the next 3 days. But the awareness is now, what do I want my health to help me do more of? And you obviously, so artificial intelligence is going to help give us some very important answers, and it will be able to drive some particular optimization. But there's going to be a disconnect between where we are and where we want to go. And that's one of my favorites. My favorite parts of the book is you're in a journey, and some of us are at the top of the mountain, and it's a beautiful place to be, but you can't stay. If you know Everest, you can't stay up at the top of the mountain forever. You're going to lose oxygen. Plus, life gets boring if it's too easy. If you got like, if life wasn't perfectly full, we wouldn't have celebrities who have billions of dollars in the bank and they're still falling apart, because that's the way life is. It's a journey. And sometimes we'll do for money that we wouldn't necessarily do if we didn't have money. So it's not necessarily perfect system. We have to be able to go in the high summits to the low unfortunate moments that happen in everyone's life. And that's where I think having a partner, a healthcare provider to walk with you, to really say, you know what? I totally understand that you're grieving right now and you've lost something that's very important to you. And there are going to be things that are going to happen in your life. And I'm here to support you and also find some way of you to flourish through this disappointment. And then there's when you're totally at the top of the mountain and you start going way off balance because you have way too much of everything. It's like going to a party and like, oh, look, there's like vodka and tequila. Well, we all know. Go ahead, mix them all and find out what happens. It's not a pretty day. It's not a good party. So we need to have some reflection of discipline and also a reality that life is 100% in fluid motion, and that today is one day, tomorrow is going to be another. My mom's favorite saying that she always told me was, trust me, this too shall pass. And she was always right. There's always a better day ahead when a bad day comes.
If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the way that modern healthcare is at the moment, what would that one thing be?
I would want our healthcare system to be more centered on you, like personalized care. That's what I'd really want. If my magic wand could happen, I would have all of our healthcare providers in this virtual reality of coming together and saying, Abby's here. If I practice at the top of my license, this is what he needs, and that all of them bridge together in a collaborative fashion so that they're no longer fighting with each other. So the cardiologist talks to the dermatologist talks to the chiropractor talks to the massage therapist, and Abby gets exactly what he needs when he needs it. The worst part of today's world is there's many practitioners who don't know what someone else does and does not communicate with them effectively because they don't have the knowledge to collaborate. That's the key. My magic wand is a beautiful wand, and it's a collaboration building out for Abby, because Abby's very different than Sherry, and he's going to have needs that are personalized for him, and that the healthcare providers around him should be able to collaborate to optimize his current reality.
It's so interesting because this is something that I go through every day with my clientele. I'm not a GP, I'm not a physiotherapist, but when I have a client with a particular issue and they ask me, it's always refer out. It's always a, hey, I've got a good understanding about this and the problem. Here's what I want you to do. Go speak with your GP and let's stay in communication. Send me whatever the report is and know that here's my email address. They can send it directly to me and just say, hey, Sherry's struggling with XYZ. Here's what I advise doing. And I'll go, fantastic. Let's have this collaborative like approach. And the great thing about this is what I've noticed is that the the client's not only far happier, but the results happen way faster and way easier as well. Because guess what? Now we're starting to kind of attack things from lots of different areas. Go, who is the expert in this field? Let's have them come in versus me just winging it and making it up on the spot. They've come in and said, here's exactly what I need to do. They need to avoid X, Y, Z, or they need to be doing A, B, C. And you're like, great, I can change their program and integrate whatever you need to integrate. And perfect. The client starts to be making, they start to make progress much faster. Now, when we're looking at healthcare in general, and my mind doesn't just stick with adults, but it goes immediately to, well, what does this look like for the future, and what does this look like as it relates to children and to how they've been brought up in the healthcare system and the medical system. And as we spoke about earlier, is generally a case of like every ill has a pill, if I remember that correctly. What do you see in rates of things like obesity, ADHD, depression, mental health issues, even just general autoimmune disorders, things of that nature? Are you seeing a rise in these things? Are you seeing this affect, I guess, a majority of people with your clinical practice?
So you're right. This is a global issue. We're actually facing several global epidemics. One is the rise in obesity. Worse is what's happening to our children is that obesity is carrying on into their adulthood. So we have the rise in obesity. Then we have to be very honest. And many people are going to pretend and hide their head in the sand that it's not about our cell phones and our social media work. And there's a very great individual called Anna Lebke. She's a Stanford physician, and she wrote the book called Dopamine Nation. And it's about really the hits that we're getting, the dopamine hits that we're getting. They're addictive. That's why smoking is addictive. The use of opiates. 28.7% of people are going to take their very first opiate. Maybe it's a Vicodin. Maybe it's an OxyContin. The very first time they're going to be addicted. Okay, recognize what that is. And that dopamine hit with our cell phones with our social media, that impacts our lives. It changes the course of how we do things and how we feel about ourselves. Remember, emotional integrity is just as important as our structural integrity. So if in fact we have a mental health crisis and potentially we have an obesity crisis, when you look in the mirror, you're starting to see a fragmented self. I don't feel good. I don't look good. And what ends up happening? I don't act good. So we have high rises of anxiety and depression, which is why we have the very unfortunate reality across the globe. This is not like one area of the world on suicide. And we need to be reflective and really start to be kinder to our fellow person. And I know politics around the world has been just unbelievably divisive. Unbelievable. It's not just in the United States of America, it's all over the globe. We need to listen to each other. We need to respect one another so that when we look in the mirror, we're not a fragmented self and we start eating better. Our companies around the globe can look at themselves and have integrity that they're feeding their population with the best food they can. We have to recognize what we're doing to our world, our earth, from an honest perspective, and where this ecosystem of both health and environment come together, we need to explore the best way to maximize our outputs. We have integrity. I know humans have integrity, and we do. 99% of us are really good people. Some of us are fractured by experience and trauma, but that doesn't mean we can't get back to who we want to be. It just takes love, compassion, and commitment.
If someone listening does have a child that does suffer with any of the things that we mentioned, whether it's mental health issues, obesity, what are they supposed to do? Because we did speak early on about your nervous system kind of being the CEO of your life, essentially being able to run things and operate the way that it needs to. Is many of these things down to a dysregulated nervous system? And if so, what are people supposed to do with that? Because we can say, this report shows this, X amount of percent of American children are obese or whatever it might be. But I think people oftentimes are like, well, what should I do? What am I supposed to do?
Yes. Well, clearly, with my own personal bias, I'm going to say that you have to start at the foundation. And the foundation is always where our primordial system of energy is, and that is your nervous system. So you nailed it, Abby. I'm going to say, for children, this is a really great place because we're trying to optimize their development. When a child's spine and nervous system functions well, they have choices that they're going to move better, they're going to sleep better, and they'll adapt better. These are little brains that need to be cared for. And so we often are asked, well, it's too, I'm nervous about pediatric care for my chiropractic care, but this is a light touch and it's highly evidence based. And you're in partnership with the pediatrician oftentimes and the family MD. Remember that collaborative one that we just talked about? So we want our children to thrive. We need to start with a holistic provider who's going to look at the whole child, and hopefully we'll be able to work with the pediatrician because there are things that the pediatrician can do that the chiropractor cannot. And it's a vice versa. But the basics have to start with, let's get a good analysis. If the child is obese, how are we going to get that child back and regulated? Because there are many things that start and actually cause obesity. The reality now becomes, are we going to take care of those fundamental issues that are part of this child's life? Because ask yourself, why is this child obese? And the answers could be, in the double digits. But we need to start with a healthcare provider who will ask the right questions and build the right momentum for that child. Personalized, working with the pediatrician is a beautiful thing. And then getting them back into alignment. That's physical alignment, emotional alignment, and neurological, because that actually will set the tone for a lifelong whole being health. And that'll change their entire future.
Kind of relates back to what we alluded to earlier, is like find the best people that you can in that specific field and add them to your team and be like, great, we need to incorporate this person because they're going to help us with this particular ailment or at least make progress in our lives the way that we want to. And in terms of making progress in life, like we're obviously looking at children right now, but the longevity space is kind of enormous right now. We've got people like Brian Johnson wanting to live forever, Peter Attia, Huberman talks a lot about the longevity space. But just from my understanding, I've not seen a lot of people really allocate time to talking about the nervous system, the spinal health. I feel like that's kind of a pillar that no one's talking in depth about. Why do you think that is, and what are we missing about not specifically talking about the nervous system?
Well, it actually begins very much like if we don't understand it, we just put it aside, right? So, 132 years ago, chiropractic was formulated based on one thing. It wasn't to practice medicine without a license. It wasn't to practice disease care. It was to recognize the functioning of the human body through the mainframe system. The mainframe is neurological. So we've been talking about it, but we've also had some fairly, in the United States, some fairly unfortunate years where because they didn't understand what we were trying to portray, then it got all messed up. The wires got crossed and some names were called. You know, you when you get discrimination, it's hard to pull back away from it. But now what's happening, Abby, which is so exciting, is that the research for the journals like Brain Sciences, Dr. Heidi Horvick comes out with, the clinical neurophysiology and the journal of pain and demonstrates that this concept called neuroplasticity means when we have our nervous system, we're starting to recognize that the research is out there and that it can control how we adopt and adapt. So, our sensory motor control, what does that mean? How I sense and how I move. Our heart rate variability, many of your audience is looking at that and saying, is that a key marker for me? Yes, it is. But what do we do with it? So, the reason why longevity wasn't a big thing before is because the science wasn't there. And now that we have the science and we have people that are out there doing more work, like we have a brilliant doctor who's a global physician, he's a neurologist. His name is Dr. Babak Kitab, and he is part of the World Brain Mapping. He's showing the links of what's happening in that evidence-based world so that we can have the conversations about what does it mean to have a aligned neurological system and what happens when it is and or becomes dysfunctional. You must ask yourself, how do I stub my toe during the day? If something happens like that, like my body should have known where my toes were, right? That's proprioception. Can that be dysregulated? Absolutely. You can hit your head coming up from being in a closet because you don't recognize that the closet door is right there. And so when we have that moment to see how our nervous system is adapting and we start learning more about how the brain actually works, which is surprising because we actually don't know a lot of what the brain can do, then we're going to have these massive moments of opportunity. And I know there's many scientists out there that are looking at the big picture. What does it take to be in a space? Because no one wants to live longer if they're going to live sicker. So that health span space, how do I live healthier in the years that I have? And I love to say chiropractic puts the life back into your years because your neurology is starting to pick up and you're adapting to better situations. You can handle the stress better. You can handle the travel better. Whatever you're doing in your life, your nervous system has to be able to adapt, and the more we know about the brain, the longer our lifespan will become, meaning that we'll live better longer because we're being proactive and we understand what prevention does for us. And that I think is the space where many like Nico Company is coming in. If your audience has never heard of that, it's really reimagining what true health is. And it's a technology company that is looking at the vision. I believe they're founded in it's a Swiss or a Swedish engineer who's looking at proactive instead of reactive health and how do I manage it scanning technology. So there's things that we can do, but the best part is that we're always looking for better and that we're not accepting status quo anymore.
That's kind of human beings in a nutshell, right? Like we always want to strive for more. Sometimes it takes us in positive directions, sometimes it doesn't, but there is always this need for wanting more, which I think can be quite beautiful, especially if it is done right. In the pursuit, I guess, of wanting more, where do you hope let's say even in the next 5 years, where do you hope that the medical space, the health space ends up? I mean, we've got our perceptions of reality, right? Of like, oh, I think this is going to happen. But what is your hope?
My hope actually is that we become truth seekers and that we actually will become more honest. We jump frog over comfort, and because a lot of times that is where we sit, we become complacent. If I was to see the next 5 or 10 years, I would like to have us start asking questions that are about the impact our body, our brain, and our nervous system can maximize, and where many of us have kind of become uh, we've looked at our choices and we start to decide, what am I comfortable with? I want them to go from convenience to optimization, from stagnation where they are right now to full motion. What does full motion look like? Because I don't even think we know. Like, we know probably 70% of what the body can actually do. But what more and what better so that we prevent injuries from happening? Because a lot of us go out there and we just bang hard. We're really pushing the limits. We're throttling our high intensity interval trainings, and we're pushing joints to the limits before the joint is actually ready to be pushed. I want us to be able to know where we are, what's the barrier to success, so that we can start leapfrogging these things that, it reminds me of when we had Usain Bolt, and they're like, there's no way you can do, a mile in under so many seconds. And he didn't listen. He's just like, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna set what's not humanly possible and make it possible. I want the next 5 years to be, let's look at what's possible. Let's like go big and lift everybody up in the process so that people now recognize that their health is the reason they're on earth. There's no greater influence in your world. Like, nothing materially will ever maximize what you have in your body right now. And there's a famous philosophical quote that I want your audience to hear right now that I think is so monumental in this moment. Think about this. This is from Socrates, and that is, contentment is natural wealth. Artificial luxury is artificial poverty. Like, wrap your head around what Socrates was really saying. And what he's really saying is, you own nothing. You came into this world with nothing. Maximize what you have right now. And that's true contentment. When you can say, the most important thing I own is right here, right now, with clothes or without, doesn't really matter. Some would say it's more fun without clothes, but that's a whole different story. But that's how we're going to optimize our current reality, is find the greatest way to optimize your health and then stick with it and then help everyone around you be as healthy as you are.
If you were to leave a message for the world, whether that's something from your book or just something that you think about a lot as we're wrapping up the show, what would that message be?
Well, one of the pieces that brings me to tears is always thinking about how you help someone who has been drastically in a place of misfortune. You My sister takes care of some quadriplegics for her work, and my heart is very heavy. If I was to walk away from this world and give someone hope, that would be my greatest gift. I want to leave people today on your podcast understanding there's hope for whatever you're going through right now, that you can find a person who can walk with you in the darkness and lift you up in the light. But I want them to recognize that you can cope when there's hope. And that is not a linguistic play. It's really, those two words are together. They're best friends. You can cope when you have hope, and that there's a person somewhere for you to get the help that you need. And if you, as a listener, could help one person, and we all did this, imagine what the world could look like. My gift to this world is that I helped one person be the best that they can be. And that, I think, is, I think back to some of the people that create excellence in the world, and that I want to be that person that hears this quote, and it's, we are what we repeatedly do. So excellence then is not an act, but is in fact a habit. I want to habitually be a helper. That's my job. I want other people to recognize that they too are helpers, and that when their eyes are fully open, they can help others too.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to be able to end this conversation. Sherry, thank you. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for not just taking your time to be on the show, but for being able to inspire people on a daily basis to be able to just improve their life, even by 1%. So thank you for that.
Absolutely my pleasure.